Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /entitled people, where people truly believe the world revolves around them and that nobody else matters. Guys, imagine if someone stole your dog and tried to charge you a finder's fee for it. Well, in today's episode, you guessed it, a crazy Karen is back at it again with her shenanigans. And I hope you enjoy the lineup of stories today. Hit subscribe if you haven't. And as always, story submissions can be sent right here. Let's dive in. Okay, so my sister is getting married in less than 3 weeks. Now, I haven't been involved in the planning as I have my own life, but from what my mom has relayed to me, it's been a nightmare. My sister wants a fancy wedding and she's micromanaging everything. I have no idea how normal this is, but from what I've heard, she's broke down crying when her fiance bought the wrong shade of white napkins. Her and both my mom and the groom's parents have invested a lot of money into this too, to the tune of over $50,000. Now, in my opinion, I think the whole ordeal is ridiculous, but it's not really my place to say anything. At least until yesterday. So, yesterday, an email was sent out to everybody invited to the wedding with attendance requirements. So these requirements were a complete joke, but not really. Some of them were just nonsensical, like what color ties are and aren't allowed, or that no one can talk to the wife or groom between this time and this time. Some were even more absurd, like the fact that no one's supposed to take pictures except the photographer for the whole event, and that no facial hair will be allowed if you attend, or that any woman with shoulder length or longer hair must have it cut or wear it in a ponytail. The worst, though, were the gift requirements. According to the email, a gift of no less than $300 value must be given. If you don't want to give a $300 gift, $250 cash will do. You will not be allowed into the venue if you don't bring a gift or cash. The email also ends with, those who choose not to follow the rules will be asked to leave immediately. Please think of the bride and groom's wishes during the stressful time. Now, I'm thinking this is a joke, right? Like, I can understand micromanaging, but that's just absurd. So I called my mom to make sure this was not a late April Fool's joke, and it was real. I told her I won't be going because of this. Now, apparently that was the wrong move because my sister has been blowing up my phone saying that I'm being selfish and that I'm ruining her special day. Now, the worst part is my parents agree with her and say that I'm being an a-hole. My parents have told me that they'll pay for my gift because I should be going to support my sister on her day, but I still think all these rules are a joke. Would I be an ass if I skipped out on the wedding? So yeah, guys, this is unfortunately such a crappy situation to be in. Like, yes, you want to be there to support your family member on their wedding day, but for them to be so demanding and that freaking entitled, like, I've read some Bridezilla stories, but this one's pretty entitled. And we all know if she doesn't attend, the family's gonna hate her forever, right? So in my opinion, she's not the a-hole for skipping out. I would have responded, since my attendance at your wedding comes with a price tag, it's clear you value gifts and money more than your guests, so count me out for both. Have a lovely wedding and a happy rest of your life. Like, in situations like this, you have to try to make them realize that they are the a-holes for expecting this from people. But hey, having to make them realize that they aren't ridiculously entitled first, that's pretty hard. So guys, let me know what you think. If your family member expected all of this from you to go to their wedding, are you going or not? Okay, so this story takes place on Remembrance Day, which is Veterans Day for my US friends, in UK several years ago. For those who may not be familiar, this is a national observed Memorial Day that takes place on the 11th of November each year. And a big part of the memorial is the 2 minutes of silence at 11 a.m. So on this particular day, I was working at a local supermarket. At about 10:55, an announcement was made saying that at 11 o'clock, the tills would close for 2 minutes, so staff could take part in the silence. When 11 a.m. came, I was stood near the till being operated by a new member of staff who I'll call Elliot. Now, Elliot was 17 years old, very sweet, also shy and non-confrontational. He had only been working there a few days at this point. He was a brand spanking new employee. He was about to start serving a customer who we'll call Karen of the story. When we all heard the beep over the loudspeaker, the background music stops playing, thus marking the beginning of the 2 minutes of silence. At that, Elliot stopped what he was doing and lowered his head slightly. A lot of people do this, almost like tipping an invisible hat to someone. Everyone around him did as well, staff and customers alike, except for Karen. So the following conversation is a paraphrase of what was said, but trust me, it was worse to experience it in person. Out of nowhere, Karen says, "Excuse me, I'm waiting here. What the heck are you doing?" At this, Elliot whispers back to her, it's the 2 minutes of silence, ma'am. At that, Karen screams, I'm in a rush. I don't care, just scan my item so I can go. Now, the woman was speaking super loudly, shouting in the otherwise silent shop. The other customers were glaring at her, but she didn't seem to notice or care. Elliot's still whispering at her and says, I can't, it's the 2 minutes of silence. To which she responds, are you deaf? I don't care, I'm in a rush. Scan my items now so I can leave. Elliot looked almost in pain with how embarrassed and unsure of what to do he was. It was at that point I quietly walked over and spoke to the woman. I say to her, Miss, if you can just wait the 2... The woman doesn't let me finish. She interrupts me and says, I don't give a damn about the 2 minutes of silence or whatever. I need to go to work and you will serve me right now. The last part of this was barked directly into Elliot's face, and he honestly looked like he was gonna cry. So I whispered to Elliot to sign off his till and go take 5 in the break room and I'll take over. Now, of course, the woman wasn't happy. She shouts at him as he walked away saying, no, he's gotta serve me. Come back here. So I then get into position behind the till and wait the last 30 seconds or so of the silence to finish. And Karen screams, for F's sake, just scan the damn item so I can go. I just ignored her until the system bleeped to signal the end of the 2 minutes and the music began playing again. With my brightest customer service smile in place, I silently signed onto the till and proceeded to complete the most painfully, glacially slow transaction that I've ever done. I picked up every item, turned it over looking for barcodes, pretending some didn't scan so I had to type in the 12-digit code manually, and some items I scanned twice, so I'd have to go through and void the procedure every few seconds. The woman looked so annoyed. She scolded me for being so slow and so bad at my job. In the end, it took me about 5 minutes to complete the sale and send her on her way. If she hadn't been such a complete toilet, she would have been out of there in 2 minutes. Guys, props on OP for doing that slow scan. And with all the petty stories I've read, I may have gone extra petty on her and called someone for a price check as well to really make her squirm. Oh, I'm sorry ma'am, this item doesn't seem to be scanning. I can't seem to find the darn barcode on this orange. And laugh as she tries to maul me to death. So yesterday, my friend, let's call him Jose, wanted to host a barbecue and he invited me over. When I'm walking up, I see a little doggo running loose that looks just like his, so I tried calling it over to me. It was one of the nicest, friendliest little puppers I've ever seen, just running around, and I lead the doggo back to Jose's. So I lead her to the back and see Jose with his dog. A neighbor from the next complex sees the dog and starts screaming how I found her dog and demanded that I give the puppy to her. Now I wasn't thinking about it because she had several animals that she kept indoors, so I gave it to her thinking it was hers. Well, late last night, at about 2 a.m., Jose calls me and asks me to come over. And lo and behold, there was the little pupper, tied up outside with about 4 inches of rope between her and the tied rope, with no food, no water, nothing. All it had was concrete, and there was barely enough rope for it to lay down. So I knock at the door, and the woman answers, and she was complaining about the time, how late it was to be disturbing her, and when I mentioned the rope, she said it was just an effing animal. I then offered her a longer rope for the dog, which I still thought belonged to her, and Jose offered some food and water. At this, she starts screeching like a Karen whose son wasn't granted captain of his team. It was at this point her daughter woke up and said something. The daughter then asked if this is my dog, and I denied, and that's when she turns to her mom and says, Mom, what are you doing? The landlord said no more animals. I thought you said you knew the owner and he was coming here around 10 o'clock to get it. At this I say, do you mind if I take the dog then? The daughter tells me, no, take the dog please, we have too many. And that's when her mom interrupts and says, no, don't take that dog. I then tell her, look, just put a longer rope on it so it'll quit howling. And it can lay down, or I swear to God, I'll have animal control out here not only for that dog, but for all of your cats. The woman hears this and she says, you try it and I swear to God, you'll be dead. I say fine. It was at this point Jose flares up in a loud mix of English and Spanish, demanding that she show the dog the same care and courtesy any living thing deserves, and calling her every Spanish insult that he's taught me in the years we've known each other. I use this time while she's distracted to call the cops, and just let them listen to him demand that she either let the dog go or put it on a longer rope so it'll stop crying, and her mixture of racial slurs and death threats. Within the hour, the cops show up. They see the tied-up dog and start demanding to check on the other animals. She received tickets for animal cruelty and a summons to court on the animal front. Animal control was contacted. The woman was hoarding about 8 total cats and the dog in her 2-bedroom apartment, all of which looked emaciated. And thanks to all of the unclean litter boxes and the hoarding the woman had done before, her daughter was snatched from her home. Additionally, at this point, she was hit with several charges, including endangering a child and animal abuse. At that point, after realizing what's happening, she saw us standing around and she decked the cop in the face and tried to come after myself and Jose. The woman was charging at us, and we were both ready to defend ourselves when she was tasered. Afterwards, we noticed the animal control guy was still there, watching and probably wishing he had some popcorn. Before he left, I got the numbers so I could find out the process of adopting, and I'm going to be in contact with animal control later today. I contacted them and checked my emails a few days later, and lo and behold, the pupper's family was found. The woman had snatched it from a yard a couple of blocks away and was demanding a finder's fee for the dog. She was trying to get $200 in exchange for the dog. The family tried to reach out to me to give me a small reward, and I told them I don't take money for doing a good deed. The great feels and getting to watch an entitled person that deserves getting tased was reward enough. Give the dog a pat on the head for me. Guys, all I can say is I'm glad Opie and his friends stumbled upon that dog that day and confronted the woman about it. And the fallout was insane. Like losing all the pets she hoarded and her daughter due to horrendous living conditions, yikes. And guys, I don't know about you, but if someone kidnapped my dog and wanted a finder's fee from me, the only payment I'm giving them would be in the form of a friggin' knuckle sandwich. That's all I can say. Like, how dare that crazy woman, right? So on this day, we were having a day of hiking and picnicking in the park with my young girls. I have a 6-month and a 3-year-old, so I bought a bunch of toys. My wife went off to feed our baby, and I was playing with our 3-year-old and her dolls, and she paired all of them into couples of men and women. Now, recently, we've learned we really dropped the ball teaching her about relationship diversity, because she went to visit her uncles, her married uncles, and she threw a tantrum, because, quote, only boys and girls can get married. Now, we thought she knew they were married because it's certainly no big secret, but we've definitely gone out of our way to correct that assumption since. We basically try to point out, you know these people, you like them, they like you, it's no different than knowing a straight couple. She's been super receptive to it, and I think she's just hadn't seen any gay people on TV or in books and was oblivious to the ones she saw in everyday life, so she wasn't sure what to think. So I said, let's put these 2 girls together like your friend Hannah's mommies, and these 2 boys together like your Uncle X and Uncle Y. The rest can stay as they were. This way, more people are included. Isn't that nice? My daughter says yeah, and we played, and it was fine, until Karen comes into the picture with her kid. I guess they were nearby and heard the conversation and saw my daughter playing with her dolls and had to say something. Karen says, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" My daughter responds, "Playing dollies." Karen then looks at me and says, "Sir, excuse me, hello, I don't appreciate you talking sex in front of my little ones." I then say, "When was I talking about that?" Karen then whisper yells and says, "The G word and the L word." I tell her, hey, I didn't say either of those, and I can talk to my kids about anything I want, so unless there's anything else. Now Karen didn't let me finish. She says, "I won't have you sharing adult conversations with a toddler here in public or anywhere." To which I say, really? That's too bad, because once we finished talking about inclusion, I was gonna crack open a 40-ounce and read some Hustler to her for a story time. Karen then says, "Is that even your daughter?" At this point, my wife walks by with our baby, and Karen tries to pull her into the conversation. Karen says to my wife, "So this man at the park is trying to teach kids about sex." Now, of course, my wife was having none of that, and she says, "What was he saying?" Well, he was telling this toddler about GAYSEX. Now, thankfully, my wife knew this woman must be nuts, and she says, "Ugh, hubby, I thought we agreed none of that until her 4th birthday." Karen then says, "This is everything wrong with our kids today. You are forcing them to grow up before their time. Do you want your daughter to have those images in her head? You are going to traumatize her." She then grabs her kid and storms off. So 15 minutes pass and everybody's getting hungry, so we break out some snacks. I'm helping my daughter get the green tops off her strawberries when a park ranger comes over. The ranger says to us, "Excuse me, but a woman reported that there's some sort of inappropriate adult activity going on at this site. Are you two, doing something you shouldn't be doing in public? Or have you seen anybody doing anything like that here?" I say to the ranger, "What? Really? Oh, no. Well, I've got my kids with me, and I can assure you we're not doing anything like that. Do you think we should move?" The park ranger looks around confused and says, No. Just keep an eye open for anything, and if you see anything like that, drop by the ranger station and let us know." So about an hour later, the woman comes back through and she says, "How the heck are you still here?" We choose to ignore her at this point. And she keeps going on and says, you know, there's piles of studies on child psychology that say that what you're doing is ruining America. Now hearing that, I wanted so badly to say something snarky, but I kept my mouth shut. She then directed her insanity at my kids, and you better believe that didn't sit well with my wife. She then turns to my daughter and says, honey, does it make you sad when daddy tries to tell you things that you don't understand? My wife then tells her, don't you talk to my kid again. Don't look in our direction. Get out of here. Right now. Leave. So of course my 3-year-old doesn't know why my wife's upset and she starts crying. The yelling and crying attracted the attention of a different park ranger. The park ranger comes over and says, is there a problem, folks? The woman starts screaming almost incoherently while her poor embarrassed kid was like, Mom, let's go. Let's just go. Come on, Mom. My wife tells the ranger, I'm so glad you're here. We were just getting ready to leave when this woman who's been harassing us all day comes and starts talking to my daughter. The park ranger then took her aside and then took us aside and we gave our sides of the story. The Karen was nearly in tears and we could hear her throwing out words like decency and innocence. When he came to us, we briefly explained, but said that we were already on our way out, so we don't want to take this any further. He said we should just go, so we packed up and we left. The woman couldn't believe we were let go, and she was still berating the park ranger with her embarrassed son when we left. Everyone should just mind their own damn business. The end. Ain't that the freaking truth, guys? And that Karen needs a nice big warm glass of mind your own damn business. I mean, come on, if you don't like what people are saying, you can always move to the other side of the park, Karen. So a few decades ago, I went from 70 to 0 too fast one night and ended up in the hospital with a pen in my teeth, signing a form on a clipboard held over my head that they could cut off both of my hands and my right leg because they were all so mangled that there was a less than 50% chance of them being saved. 18 hours of surgery, and I woke up with everything I went in there with, and a few extra metal parts to boot. But it took years and a couple of dedicated physical therapists for me to be able to walk and use my reconstructed hands. I've had 4 follow-up surgeries since, and now I can walk without a limp, but it's still difficult to walk very far without pain, so I have a handicapped placard on my car. So I found out real quick that there's an attitude among handicapped placard owners. They all seem to think that they're more deserving than you of the spot you just parked in. That, plus FedEx drivers use them all the time. So my first experience with FedEx was when I went to get my name registered on the sewer and water utilities for the house we just moved to. There was only one handicap spot and a FedEx delivery truck was parked in it. So I parked sideways and blocked him in and then hobbled my way into the building with my cane. About 5 minutes later, the FedEx guy comes up and says, who owns the silver Infinity outside? I tell him that would be me. He says, you're blocking me in. I tell him he's parked in a handicap spot and he says, I was only gonna be there a few minutes. To which I say, well, now you're gonna be there until I finish my business here. The guy then tells me I can't do that, and I say, we can call the sheriff and see which one of us gets a ticket. But the entitled portion of the story happens a few years later. By then, I was able to walk without my cane, and I'd encountered more than one of these, so I knew what was about to happen, and I prepared my response ahead of time. So on this day, I had just parked and gotten out of my car and was walking into the Wally world when I see the Cadillac moving slowly by. The window was rolled down, and the entitled woman was about to lay out her case on why she deserved my spot, and I didn't. The woman says to me, hey, what's your problem? I said to her, excuse me? She then shouts, you don't look like you're handicapped. I tell her, why thank you, I've worked really hard to be able to walk without a limp. She then repeats and says, I don't think you're really handicapped. I say to her, you could have stopped talking after the first 3 words of that last sentence and been entirely correct. The woman then asked, so what's wrong with you? I then sigh and say, well, if you must know, I lost my foot in an accident. She then says, really? How'd it happen? I told her I broke it off in some nosy woman's ass. I then kept walking while she drove off angrily. Guys, I love quick-witted responses. I always envy people who can come up with these lightning-fast responses on the spot. But yeah, I've said this before, you can never tell if someone has a disability that isn't visible that still qualifies them for a handicap placard. So guys, be kind. Don't be like this Karen, right? And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /entitled people. Guys, if you like the stories today, hit that thumbs up. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'll link it right here. An entitled Karen learns that she's not so important when she destroys her own career. Guys, check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy, we'll see you guys in the next one. We love you.